All right, everyone. So the big news is that obviously the raid that we've all been dying to see has finally dropped. Molten Core is here with us, the Season of Discovery version. This isn't your granddaddy's Molten Core. It is definitely something that is worth checking out. There's some interesting mechanics and requirements in there that the community's now come across, and we're more than happy to discuss here on Countdown to Classic. And so through a lot of hard legwork by our friend Grant, we've got some raiders in here that have now, some that have done the raid, some that haven't done the raid, that have just watched it and are eager to get in there very, very soon. But we're going to get some first-hand experience from guys that, were in there for 9 hours the other day, and some old favorite guests as well. So let's say hello to everyone who's here. Grant, or mate, welcome back, and thank you so much for sort of helping. Like, you did most of the work putting this together, mate.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invite, Josh.
All good, man. And you're joined by, as always, your I don't know, what is it? Your Sergeant at Arms, Uncle Creepy, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. How's it going?
Good, man. Good, good, good. And the next guest is someone who's not like technically part of your guild. They are the GM of another guild, but they were running the stream that I was watching with you guys yesterday. Streets, mate, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for the invite, Josh. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And as always, we are very, very happy to welcome back an old favorite, Fred Munro. Mate, you haven't done the raid yet, but more than happy to talk about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'll defer to these guys on a lot of it. I watched a lot of it on stream, but and heard other people's takes on it and had my own takes. But that's not having gone into it. That'll be on Sunday.
All right, guys, let's do this. There's actually quite a few things to discuss, and I'll apologize to everyone who's maybe watching live on stream, and for everyone in the audio recording. Please believe me, I will do my absolute best to be on my game as per usual with podcast hosting, but I'd ask for a slight amount of leeway and forgiveness from my guests on this one, because I have raid in 3.5 hours and I am pushing my fucking ass off to get my healer up and running to throw in the raid. I'm 30% away from level 60. I've leveled this character in a week like a madman. Started it literally a week ago, almost to the minute from level 1. He's about to ding level 60 in the next, hour or so while we're recording this. I'm just going to mindlessly grind mobs. So guys, if you can allow me a little bit of slight absent-mindedness while I try to play the game but run this show at the same time. Trust me, I'll do the best job I can as per usual with throwing the questions your way. But I'm excited to get in there and see it myself. But let's hear from the guys who have been there and done it. And I think the first topic of conversation that we really would be remiss to not bring up straight off the bat is the fire resistance. Just before we started recording, Fred and I sort of started talking about this, and Fred got all fired up and started giving his A material, and I was like, whoa, 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 save it for the show. But Grant, I might start with you, and we'll go around the table and get all the guys discussing the very simple question. Well, let me set it up if people don't know. So basically what's come to light is that if you don't have, I think it's 226 fire resistance, not 225, not 224, nothing lower. If you do not have 226 for fire resistance, you will get one shot by, these mobs at times. You'll just drop like a fly. It's not particularly fun. You didn't hit the mark, and that's just how this raid works. At heat level 3, I should say, by the way. Forget for the other heat levels. These guys did heat level 3. That's what I watched for hours the other day when they did it. Grant, is this hard requirement that now everyone is discussing a good or a bad thing for classic raid design?
So I personally think it's a bad thing, just because it's historically fire resistance has been capped at like 315. That's what you tried to run back in the MC days. If you were main tanking, you could drop down to 210. There was different thresholds, so a lot of us were basing that previous experience off of that. The requirement from our guild was, hey, everyone needs to come in maximum fire resist. We saw the message from Blizzard saying 226, but we during the progression we actually had people that were 220, 225, and they would just end up getting one shot. So it's our expectation, not expectation, but our assumption was, if you were wearing fire resist, you would just take less fire damage, and you could actually, if you had someone maybe with 50 or 100, you could still bring them to the raid. You just might have to pump a lot more heals into them or keep an eye on them. Whereas, there was really like, if you're at 50 or 100, you got hit with like a 400k conflagrate and just fell over. So it's sort of a hard requirement. Like you have to have 226. If you're trying to base off totems or paladin auras, you only have a 30-yard range. So if you get knocked away from it, there's a high chance that you're going to end up getting one shot. We had that problem multiple times in our raid. So
we'll talk about the totem in a second.
Oh yeah.
So I guess I'll wrap up here, but I don't really like the design personally. I think it was I wanted to see something maybe a little bit more of 226 as a recommendation, but you can be fully immune to fire damage if you hit 315. 226 you're going to take some damage. Lower than that you take more. That's sort of what I was hoping for. So yeah.
Okay. Streets, let me throw it over to you and get your commentary on this one. And just, FYI, we love him to death here. He's been popping in a lot lately. No pressure, Streets, but, one of the guys that made the raid is sitting right here listening to you. So your feedback is going, like, literally direct to the source. So please, by all means, let, Blizzard and Tim know what you think of this fire resistance requirement. But having listened to what Grant has had to say, how do you feel about it?
I agree with him, and I think it's a bad thing. I also think it's kind of a lazy thing. What I mean by that is, it's not necessarily a skill check. It's more of an FR gear check. If you have 224, you just get one shot for 400,000. If you somehow go out of range of the totem, you get one shot. It's just a gear FR check. The strats, the mechanics, everything is the same. So, yeah, and it does kind of suck that it's 224, you hit it for 400,000. There's no leeway. You can't even somewhat heal through it. No, it's just, you're dead. It makes Gar really difficult because you can't count on Mark of the Wild. You can't count on Juju Ember. You can't count on those two things. So that's brutal. And then also totems. Gar will punch you, so you'll be out of range of them and then die. So it is a really, I think, a lazy thing they did, personally. But those are my thoughts on it.
All right.
Overall, I thought the fights were very, very much similar to SOM. In fact, they were like the exact same thing. So, little disappointing there, but
fair enough. We'll go Fred, and then we'll go Creepy to round us out. And I'll just inject this commentary from Tim, who's listening in intently as you guys are going through this, and he adds the following from the Blizzard side of things. Fred, Tim says, we're looking at the extreme damage malts on not meeting the FR caps by reasonable margins. We recognize it's a bit too harsh in its binary nature, not exactly where we want it. Hoping to make some adjustments next week, we may have overestimated the reliability of totems and auras with the amount of movement required on some of these fights. Love heart. Fred, having heard everything the guys have said, having heard that commentary from Tim, let's just start off again. I rudely interrupted you as you got really fired up with your passionate take on this FR hard cap. So tell us what you think about it and what you think about what Tim said.
Well, I think what Tim said was excellent. I mean, it sounds like exactly sort of what I had in mind here. So I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. Now they said, oh, well, we're looking at it.
But they always say that. Forget that. Lay into it.
I guess just to reiterate, the way it works currently is that and this is what the guys were saying previously, is it's a very binary nature, right? Either you have the cap or you don't. If you're off by 1, you're off by 2, you're dead. It's as if you didn't have it. I would point out, Tim, and also I think Grant, we're talking about the totems. Yes, the totems I think are tough right now. Once you get 2-piece, the range on fire resistance totem will go up from 20 to 40. I believe it might be 30 right now. Let me check my tooltip. It is 20. It'll go up from 20 to 40. So that should hopefully make them more reliable, but who knows? And also that is 2-piece. But yeah, ultimately I think to the extent it's not binary, but instead just does damage to you the more under the cap you are, that opens up, I think, interesting player choices and player strategies. It actually makes it a mechanic, so to speak, right? Because right now it's not really a mechanic, and I think maybe this is what Streets was saying. it's not really a mechanic. It's just you have to have the fire resistance. That's it. It's not a mechanic you play around. It's just this is it, right? Whereas if all of a sudden, okay, you're taking, and again, the suggestion I had was 5 damage per second per point under the cap you are, then it is a mechanic you can play around because you can say, okay, I'll go in with 4 near the cap. I'll take 200 damage per a second. Like, good luck, healer. Like, that's a lot of damage. It's 1,000 damage per 5. I mean, that's almost as if you're using a heavy runecloth bandage on yourself in reverse constantly, you know. But hey, you know that would be a mechanic that you hypothetically could play around. And if you drop out of your totem range, you know you're not dead instantly. Instead, if you lose the 60 FR, or I guess it's a 35 FR because maybe you'd have 25 from other sources. Okay, you're taking in that math. Let's see, 150, you're taking what is that? 35 times 5 damage per second. That's a lot, but you're not totally fucked, right? You don't die instantly. Instead, okay, I need really to get back to my totem because I'm burning up here. So I think it would deal with those frustrations. So I think what Tim said was great. And I really, I agree with the guys. Although again, caveat, I haven't actually done it. I've only witnessed it. I've only seen it. I've only heard the takes of Streets because he's my GM. Who's actually in the raid. And of people like Alondo who also did it and were complaining sort of about this. I don't have the ability to strategize, sort of thing.
I forgot to bring that up before, and we again just before we hit the record button started laughing about this. I mean, yeah, for everyone who doesn't know, randomly Grant I was watching this stream from Noted yesterday, and by the way, we didn't say Grant, but I mean I realized that we're yet to see sort of what the player base of SOD is, but it's still an accomplishment nonetheless. I believe it was it world fourth for you guys, US second, is that right for this one?
Oh, it was world 18th. I think it was fourth horde.
Okay.
For the horde side. So overall we were 18th, and then US like 6 or something. I can't remember. I have to go look, but top 20.
Well, congratulations. It's a great achievement nonetheless. But I was watching Streets' Discord stream of your guys' run, and really enjoyed that. And then you pulled Streets into this chat. And Fred's here, and he goes, "Hey, that's my fucking GM." So I said, what a small world of Warcraft, right, Fred?
Yeah, although we did clarify, it seems like his alt is my GM, so don't worry, Noted. Main your guild, we're all good.
Very good. Hey, let's throw it to Creepy, and then I'll welcome Mandalore and Boonja to the chat and get your guys' takes as well. Uncle Creepy, I heard your lovely voice as I listened in on the stream the other day. We're going to get into some of the funnier or more tragic parts of the raid as well soon. But let's keep going on this fire res point. Mate, the guys have raised some phenomenal points, and obviously it's wonderful to hear from Tim that Blizzard is looking into it already. But, it really is a kind of night or day situation in terms of I shouldn't say night or day, I should say love-hate situation where you either think this is fantastic or you think it's horrible, and there's not much in between. The guys talk about whether or not the one shot was the right thing to do, or maybe you should have just taken like a really hard healable damage. Who knows? How did it feel for you as a DPS player with that threat of the one shot coming your way? Did you have 226 fire res or what?
Yeah, so I did. I mean, that was something we had said as a guild that we wanted everybody to have available. We kind of, I don't think we had originally come up with necessarily a target of 226. I think we had, at least I had been communicating to people. My plan was I plan to have a set that's a hard 210, because that's kind of like a break point for partial resist and that sort of thing. And then we wanted everybody to be able to meet fire resist cap should that be required for the clear. And I think the biggest problem was I think most of our raid met that threshold, but I think pretty much everybody had kind of figured into their calculations. Totem, Mark of the Wild, Juju Ember, that was all like going into their thought process and meeting that. And as we found out that it just wasn't going to be necessarily reliable to count on those things, so we had some people who just on the fights like Gar, like we mentioned, it became problematic. And some people just didn't have enough anyways because they couldn't get it, the time constraints and that sort of thing.
G'day, mate.
So I guess I'm kind of a couple of schools of thought on this. I think you'd actually probably I was on your stream last week, and I might have even said something like, my expectation is they're going to do something that's going to be kind of lazy, like every mob just has a buff like Wrath of Ragnaros that has like a pulsing AoE or something like that. I think that's actually what I said I expected to happen. This I thought was even kind of a step cheesier than that. If I'm being brutally honest. Um, Now I'll say this: I didn't play Psalm, so the fact that the bosses were all kind of a copy paste of Psalm mechanics,
We'll get to
it,
that. Yeah, don't worry.
it was so at least from that aspect for me it was new.
Yeah.
So I found that exciting to a degree. But I will say that once we kind of came to grips with the strategy and everybody was going to be at that required threshold, I found the raid was not that bad. And I as a DPS player, maybe it was different for healers, maybe it was different for tanks. As a DPS player, I felt like I was still able to, perform at a high level, play at a reasonably high level, and I didn't feel that impacted by it. As far as changing it, I'm fine with the way it is. To be honest, I don't love it. It would have been nice if it wasn't, but it is, and I'm okay with the way it's turned out. I think probably to reference the fact that they're looking at adjusting it, I think that's probably been a problem with Psalm in general, where they've had some things they've implemented, and the higher end guilds have gone in and put a lot of time in to clear the content, and then they come in and smash it with the ban hammer or the nerf hammer and make the content trivial, and that to me is more frustrating than anything. This is what they've released, and I'm fine with it, and I'll keep raiding with it. I'll adjust my gearing planning for this for the entire phase, and I'm okay with it. But if come Tuesday a patch comes out and they gut it, and now it's super easy, and everybody's doing it after we spent an exorbitant amount of time doing it, and re-gearing ourselves and re-enchanting ourselves and putting in all the time and effort and gold, and it's just now trivialized like ST was and is no longer fun, which ST was not after they made the modifications to it. I'll be far more upset than I was about the quality of the content. It's what they've done. Just commit to it.
Very good.
I don't know what else I can say about that. It's not like having 226 is an unattainable thing. Maybe not everybody can do it on week 1. Maybe not everybody can do it on week 3. But anybody who wants to put the time and effort in, they can do it. And there's no reason to now make it simple, trivialized content because some people are upset about it.
All right, well said, mate. Let's take a little trip down to Australia for a second, and we'll hear from Mandalore and Ubiquitous. Ubiquitous is busy fucking injecting a coffee into his veins and fucking cutting his toenails with some fucking pliers or something. Boys, and then we'll get to, thanks so much for joining Shaq and Boonja. We'll get to you guys real soon. Ubi, let me start with you and then we'll go to Mandalore. Mates, we got the comment from Go in Twitch chat where he says, the fire resistance thing is an attunement to a raid that already has an attunement. So we're just layering attunements on top of each other. I slightly disagree. Go, I feel like, I love you so much, brother, and I always find myself saying on the podcast, I disagree with Go, which makes me sound like such a prick, but I fucking love you like a brother. I slightly disagree with that take. I mean, obviously, given the Molten Core attunement is, you could barely call it an attunement in my mind. But his point is solid nonetheless, that this is, I made the note to the guys before, and we've kind of said the same thing during this recording, just dancing around it. It's effectively like needing a key to a dungeon. You either have it or you don't, and if you don't have it, you can't go. Ubiquitous, how do you feel? I'm not sure whether you've done the raid or not. I don't believe you have, considering I don't even know if you're 60 yet, you fucking scrub. But what do you think of all this?
I think it's just showing that the devs can't win. And even if all you're getting access to is more of the same things that even the most casual Andy is getting, people are just butthurt that they aren't getting the 3 times loot or whatever the hell the increase is. I think because it is optional. You don't have to do heat 3. You don't have to have fucking fire resistance. And if you just get tier 1, you'll end up with it by accident because tier 1 always had shitloads of fire resist on there. This is just a way to. This is just a. It's just a method to keep the sweaties entertained in their raid prep. Like what would they have been doing for the last week if this wasn't in the game? Like they would have just had Prebis like significantly easier, or they would have just farmed ordinary Prebis. So I don't know. It's just I think it's cool. I think it's fun, and it's just optional. Like I know heaps of people who just did heat level 1 and they had fun in Molten Core. It's
a good point to raise. We haven't really talked about the optional side of things now. That this is my fault as a host. We sort of tend to forget, guys. We are just talking about heat level 3, the optional hardest difficulty that you don't have to do in this raid. That's probably a bad move by me to sort of not highlight that more. But also, I should just say, fucking ubiquitous. Can't have you slept? You sound like you've just eaten a fucking carton of Marlboro Reds and a bottle of JD.
I am falling ill with something, and I'm rusty. So,
are you hungover?
just a touch.
Just a fucking fraction. All right, Mandalore, fucking help Sunshine out here, mate. What do you reckon of it all?
Oh, mate, I've been up since 4 a.m. I don't know if I'm going to be that much fucking help.
You were probably out drinking with him.
No, not this time, mate. That's dog got me up, and that was it. Oh, fuck it, may as well jump on.
Right.
I like what they've done. I think it's a step in the right direction. Every phase we've had people bitching, we don't have anything to do. We need content. This is fucking content. Like, it's giving people a reason to go out in the world grinding, be it fucking real farming, so you got access to your cores, so you can start crafting the pieces you need to endeavor to work towards your heat level 3. I've got no issue with it. I really don't.
I agree. I agree, quite frankly. Outside of like, well, here's the part where we'll see if you take a turn in the road here, Mandalore. I agree that the fire res grind, and people are bitching about, oh, it's just another fucking grind, and oh my god, and blah blah blah. Like, I think it's cool and stuff. I think it's something to do in an MMO in a genre that typically needs things to do. Right? I'm on board with it. The question is, I guess, I'll ask the other guys about that. I think that's a good point to raise, of just fire resistance gear in general in 2024 in Classic. How do we feel about it outside of the one-shot mechanic? But when we get to the one-shot mechanic side of things, Mandalore, are you also on board with that side of it? Or do you wish, like some of the other guys, that it was a little bit less harsh and that like you still needed that 226 mark, but if you didn't have it, you maybe just got hit really hard as opposed to one-shot?
I can see both positives and negatives. Like you said, there's 2 other heat levels that you can go into. My biggest gripe at the moment with the Warlock Discord, because I'm Warlock tank main, everyone's, oh yeah, no, we're only doing heat 1. I don't need any fire res. I said, mate, you're a fucking tank. You're still going to want fire res. Oh no, but it says don't need fire res. So no, you're tanking. Back in the day, Warlocks never tanked. You could get away with next to bugger all. So I think the understandings are a little bit warped, and I think people are going to go in with the understanding that they don't need fire res as a tank. I'm like, mate, you're going to get fucking deleted. Like 2019, tanks were rolling in with 315. Like, that was the requirement. Otherwise, yeah, I guess we've got access to a whole different set of runes and abilities for the healers to make things a bit easier in that respect. But yeah, there's always going to be resistances in the game. We've just got to learn to work towards them and how to adapt if change comes in. Like we said already, like lowering it or making a ticking damage if you don't reach those gaps, then cool. People are going to find ways of the easiest way forward at the end of the day.
Fair enough. Boonja, we'll get you to round us out on this part of the conversation. We'll go to another point about MC after this, but some really, really good points being raised here, Boonja, about like, outside of the fact that this, of course, the Australians are fucking hungover and dusty, they're getting out there that, look, this is optional. Fire res grinds can be fun. It gives you shit to do in an MMO. What are we really complaining about here? Is it the fact that we have to get fire res gear, or what happens in the dungeon if you don't have the fire res gear? Bridger, have you done the raid or not? And how do you feel about all this in general?
Yeah, so I did the raid Thursday when it came out, like later in that evening. My thoughts, I'm just going to kind of go down a list of kind of things I've been writing down. I mean, so the SOM Molten Core mechanics like is just a big letdown for me, because I did play Season of Mastery, and for me it's just a concern for projecting forward into new raid tiers, right? Are they just going to copy paste Season of Mastery for the entire run of SOD, for AQ, for Nax, for BWL? Are we going to get that Chromagus version where you have to use like every protection potion before you pull? It took like 8 minutes. Anyway, that's one thing. The fire resistance, they vaguely mentioned it sometime in phase 3, that you will need fire resistance for the heat levels, but they didn't really give any more further information on the caps. They just gave that information, I believe, 2 days before MC dropped, which was to call out the specific like thresholds, breakpoints, which I feel like is just kind of unfortunate, because it leads to price gouging for those items, right? And a lot of people will say, well, why didn't you just, when they said it in phase 3, buy the Librams then, or buy the FR rings then, or what have you, prepare better. But some of us were playing Kata. Some of us were not playing Season of Discovery at that point in the game. And I mean, it feels kind of punitive for the people returning, to just drop it with that little notice, right? So that was how I felt about that. And also it creates the environment where you're running dungeons with 5 people and everybody needs the same thing, right? Which I mean is, I guess, the point of it, right? You want to spam these dungeons to keep the content fresh, but sometimes it's annoying when that item doesn't drop, or it drops and everybody else rolls against you. Tier 0.5 missed an opportunity. I think they could have just had fire res on that tier 0.5. We spent a lot of time getting it. I know I did, and I don't even use it. And then I also just want to make a note that I got 226 fire resistance unbuffed today, and I feel like I beat the game. Like I don't even know why I would need to go into MC and get that gear. That's being a little like facetious, but you kind of understand what I'm saying. Is like, granted, Tim did say they were going to make adjustments. That's great. Looking forward to that. But on that point, adjustments after the fact is a welcome reprieve for all the casual people, but annoying for the people who did put the effort in based on what the rule set was when we walked into the place.
I think that's a very fair point. Very fair point.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say is I don't even want to raid heat level 3 personally. I'm trying to convince my guild to do heat level 2 because I can easily meet those caps while wearing the gear I feel like I want to wear.
All right. Hey, Fred, let me throw it back to you, because Boone just said something that's... there's so many things to talk about here, guys, so I'll just try and sort of navigate these topics as best we can as I now arrive in Silithus and my grind begins for these last fucking 6 bars of experience. Fred, on the tier 0.5 point, I think that... I wanted to get to the SOM mechanics next, but we'll park that for maybe a second and just talk about this first. A lot of people are saying, and you were kind of the leader of the charge in the Countdown Discord, Fred, that it's a bit of a shame what's happened now with the tier 0.5 gear and how it's kind of been somewhat invalidated, albeit despite the fact that it's a pre-raid BIS grind. You went through so fucking much to get it. And I have to say, guys, I always forget what the tier 0.5 questline asks of you. And like, I looked into it on my Hunter like a week ago and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go and get a couple of those tier 0.5 pieces. And then you look at the first couple of quests and what they want you to do and the drop rates and everything. And I just went, fuck that. Who's got time for that? And the people who have time for it are the hardcore players, the guys like you who fucking this, it's about a commitment to a raid, a commitment to the group. You guys are putting in the time for each other to try and clear heat level 3 and do really well and achieve success. That it literally like filters out the casuals like me who go like, I'm not spending fucking 8 hours on the first part of 10 for my tier 0.5 bullshit. But you guys say yes to that and say, no, this is fun. This is something we want to do. We want to be the best, and that's what we'll do to get there. But now that you got there and you go into Molten Core and you find yourself immediately ditching all of this shit for fire res gear, which I get that pre-raid gear is supposed to be ditched anyway, but this just feels like a harder kick in the nuts. Is that kind of a semi-decent crude summary of how you're feeling about Tier 0.5 at the moment, Fred?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say that they did do a lot to make it more accessible as time went on. Like the changes they made to make stuff multi-drop and drop for everyone in group, I think did a huge amount to alleviate a lot of the pain points. Like, for example, I had a friend who was slightly ahead of me in the quest, and he did the Alcaz Island, and it took 13 hours. This is Cat Branchman.
Oh my
By
god.
the way, Streets. And it took me 25 minutes because I did it directly after the hotfix,
Oh.
right? So I can think of other people who would feel more pissed than I do. I think it's kind of lame, and that was sort of the issue. Is this sort of relates more back to the main point, which is that there'd be sort of optionality, right? Where if it wasn't a hard binary mechanic, you're still extremely incentivized to build FR gear. I mean, if you're taking 5 fire damage per second per point under the resistance cap, you don't want to be that much under the resistance cap. But there's some optionality. But oh well, maybe I actually would use this gear. And that's sort of something that has locked out a little bit. It sort of feels like wow, like Blizzard spent all this time creating the sets with bonuses for every single class. I spent all this time in the sim seeing like, oh, actually, it's better if I go 6-piece tier 1 and 2-piece tier 0.5. And in fact, Blizzard actually changed the set bonuses on tier 1 specifically to allow this sort of mix and matching. And all of a sudden, this is kind of out the window because of the binary mechanic of the fire resistance. I think again, if you didn't make it binary, which is what we were sort of saying earlier, you would still be super incentivized to do this grind, get the fire resistance gear, which is I think what a lot of the Aussies were saying. You can still have that. Just it doesn't need to be binary in order for you to have that incentive.
Anyone else on this Tier 0.5 stuff? Jump in, guys. It's everyone's at the pub.
I mean,
I'd
So-
like to take advantage of my position as a true casual Andy for the first phase of my life
yeah.
and say, well, I guess exploit early, exploit often didn't pay off this time, and no, but honestly, it does sound like it was a bit of a dupe. Like, I feel bad for people that went through that quest line because I remember doing it in Classic because the rogue set is so good, and it sucks that it is just useless. If you are doing Heat 3, it's not useless if you're opting for another Heat level. But yeah, it's a bit lame because it was something that everyone actually kind of was excited that was getting released this early. I was like, oh yeah, I never got to do this quest line because whenever it used to come out, it was useless for pretty much everyone, except like collectors. And then it's like, okay, it can go in my bank already because I can't actually use it in raids. I'd be, if a bit of a tangent, but like, I reckon they could have just gone down the path of adding a fuckload more fire resist enchants via quests or something like that. Like, not an enchanter would be doing it, but you do quests similar to like a 0.5 quest line to be able to enchant all your actual proper previous gear with fire resist on top of it. But I don't know if that just means it would be one super broken set against anyone that uses fire. But
Creepy, you were going to
just
jump
keep
in?
people locked into items.
Creepy,
It's not that
then
great.
whoever that was. Creepy, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess my take on it is anybody the tier 0.5 grind is a lot, and it's going to be a lot. I mean, it's not like it's new content and it's a brand new thing. Before you undertake even the first step of the quest, it's an incredible time investment.
I just to interject just for 1 second. I would almost term it as fucking ridiculous, Creepy, but that's me. I'm a casual.
Yes. So anybody who's going to grind that out in the level and grind that out in the week or week and a half you had before Molten Core came out to give yourself the best chance, that's people that are all in a hardcore raid setting for the most part. If you're doing that in a casual raid setting, that seems to be an oddity to me. I'll say that. So anybody who's going into a hardcore raid setting and grinding that gear out, you are going in knowing with the understanding that this gear that you put probably 50 hours into getting at a minimum is going right in the trash after the first 2 weeks. You know that. It's a known quantity. So to have a mechanic that is going to expedite that by a couple of days, I'm not even the least bit butthurt about it. I grinded it all out. I actually was on vacation when the phase dropped. I leveled to 60 and grinded out the whole full tier 0.5 pre-raid BIS before the FR announcement even got made. So I put in a lot of time, and I don't know. It was no skin off my nose. I was expecting to just throw it all right in the vendor after a week or two, anyways. Uh, I I honestly think if for one really nice advantage of the way this has been handled with the fire resist is that for once in classic WoW, sim and pre-raid bis wowhead nerds actually have to do some independent thought on the fly and change their concept of gearing for the phase. And if they don't want to, and they really want to use their tier 0.5 and do what they had been planning the entire time, raid heat level 2, raid heat level 1.
Fuck.
You don't need to ruin it for everybody else.
Imagine being a sim nerd, right, Fred?
I mean, I looked at the Sims again immediately. It was not an issue for me, but it seems it's not the Sim nerds. The Sim nerds will just do it themselves. Oh, cool! It's changed.
I mean, I've already simmed out 226 on my rogue. Like, I have 20 FR on my Night Slayer cover I got on Thursday. Like, it's just a hurdle that you have to be over, and it's fine in my opinion. But we'll never raid in full technical BIS because I plan on doing heat level 3 the whole way through. So it'll be a mix of tier 1 with the epic craftable gear for a rogue. That's just what it will be.
Well, I'll keep it going, guys. We'll just finish on this one. I think a couple of you other guys wanted to jump in on this one, but whether it's Streets or someone else who wants to jump in, just to finish it off, like, are any of you guys, sort of upset about ditching tier 0.5 so early, or is it just, hey man, that's the way the cookie crumbles? That's MMOs.
So I'll jump in. I'll introduce myself. I'm new to this podcast. I'm a hardcore PvPer at heart. I'm a multi-rank 1 rogue, recent Glad Rogue and Wrath. I've been kind of bouncing around characters through SoD for whatever our guild needs. I played Mage and Nomer and Sunken Temple and was consistently, top world DPS 1 to 10 overall. And now I'm playing healer, and I'm enjoying that this phase. So I kind of look at the tier 0.5 as almost another part of the expansion, if you will. You have MC, you have BWL, you have AQ. I also look at the tier 0.5 as another, instance, if you will, or raid, if you will. I'm as sweaty as they get, and will grind everything that you possibly need. I went into MC with my priest with every possible piece of healing gear that I could use, and every possible piece of fire resist that I could use. I could say that the tier 0.5 was progression centric, and that really was what it was for. I really like progression. I look at that as an entire different entity of the entire game that you only get to do, once when every new raid comes out. So I'm not really upset that that stuff was only there for progression. I do wish that we got to use it a little bit longer, but again, I enjoyed that pre-biz part of the phase. Everyone was on. We're all in Discord hanging out. Everyone's grinding the gear. It was that classic WoW guild camaraderie feeling of grinding all that stuff out for everyone. My 2 cents quickly on the 226 cap. I don't like it at all. I think it's horrendous. I think that everyone can now just say, oh, I'm going to get what is my pre-bis gear or what is my bis gear for 226 and just slot in whatever FR pieces you need and slot in with whatever, MC gear that you need. There is zero dynamic play and ability for the better players to take advantage of anything. I would like to have seen it as, you can play with whatever fire resist that you need, but for an example, on a boss like Gehennis, if you're wearing 100 fire resist and you get hit by 2 ticks of that rain of fire, you're dead. So maybe you want to bring a little bit more. But if your healers are really good, you can, stack some more DPS gear in and only wear 100 fire resist. So they really took out the dynamic play for those top tier players and those top speedrunning guilds, and are now just requiring across the board, everyone's going to be locked in to 226 gear. They're going to sim out what's bis for it, and everyone's going to be pretty much wearing the same gear with no dynamic play around it. So I'm a little upset that that's the case.
No, fair enough. And sorry, that was very rude of me, Shaq, to keep you on the sidelines that long. Thank you so much for jumping in, mate. I appreciate it. Hey, guys, there's a very passionate fucking piece there from Shaq. Does that resonate with anyone else here before we move on?
Just one little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, you go straight.
You can go. I was just to say, I totally agree because it's black and white. You're either one shot or you only take 500 damage. So there is no play whatsoever. You either get hit for 100,000 or nothing. So you can't be a good player and just avoid fire damage. There's just no way.
Just get good. Just
so
don't get one shot, right?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. It's very black and white. There's no gray. There's no way for you to, okay, I'm going to play this one really careful. And no, it's just random one shots. Like Gar, for example, will just send one of his little mini boulder dudes straight at your face and hit you for 400,000. That happened to me on my stream. I don't know if you guys
should have stacked Stam, right?
Yeah. So that's a very unfortunate part of it. Is it takes a lot of skill out of it, and you can't combat that. So
Fair enough.
Just piggybacking off what Jack said is exactly true.
No, absolutely. Mandalore, you're going to say something, and then we'll move on to the SOM mechanics.
That's right. Just the 0.5 question. It was always about that journey. Like, especially it was a catch-up mechanic for people who couldn't get into MC BWL back in the day. Like guess the more casual people, they could just chip away and get those pieces. This time around, I thought it was brilliant. That World PvP down in Silithus, we were down there for 3.5, 4 hours, about 20 of us from a guild. We were just griefing the Alliance non-stop. We rolled down there to start getting the Twilight pieces to start summoning the Duke for the Cinders. We got rolled probably 2 or 3 times, and then a few more hordes started trickling down, and then we started summoning our Dukes. The Alliance come through, rolled us out the first one. Unfortunately for them, I think they had about 16 or 17 summons in a row without getting Cinders, and then we were big enough, and then we just wiped them out. And then we just farmed them for 2 hours. We got our Cinders. Oh, should we stay? Yeah, fuck it, why not? And then the World PvP that brought that, camaraderie, I guess, in the Discord. Everyone was just pissing themselves laughing. It was good. It's content.
Yeah, it's all content, baby. Guys, let's move on to the SOM mechanics that a few of you have talked about a little bit already. Look, just last week, this is the part where, we can all laugh at Josh for being the world's worst fucking Nostradamus impersonator. Just last week on the podcast, I said I'd be really shocked if this was just a copy-paste job of the SOM mechanics. I said, and we can have a laugh about this when I'm interviewing him in a couple of days. I said, no. Tim's got that creative itch. He'll want to bring a few new things into the mix, I reckon. He'll want to fuck with us a little bit. But look, we don't know what's going on. Maybe dev time was constrained and other things were being worked on. Or now that we know it really was just basically a copy-paste of the SOM mechanics with a new boss, by the way, which we'll talk about soon. But now that we do know it was a copy-paste job, which a few of you picked, and I was on the wrong side of this one. But I just wonder if it was a situation, like Nax back in the Wrath days, where they were like, fuck, we had this version of the game that, look, by our own admission or for whatever reason, wasn't widely played. Not a lot of people played SOM around Molten Core time. The audience really did drop off. It was a relatively niche version of the game. That isn't being a doomer. I think that's kind of just the factual situation of it. I just wonder if they sat down and Tim might have designed the raid back in SOM, I think he did, and just said, fuck, I made this thing and fucking hardly anybody played it. Can I just use it again so people actually see my work? Like Blizzard did with Nax back in Vanilla moving into Wrath. They made a raid that only like 1% of the player base saw, and they were like, well, fuck that. We worked really hard on this. Let's move it on out for everyone. I don't know if that's what happened, but maybe. And obviously it would have saved them a shitload of dev time by doing the copy-paste job. Is it a little disappointing? Yes. For me personally, having not even done the raid yet, I was a bit like, that's a shame. I do wish that they just brought in a couple new mechanics on each boss along with the SOM mechanics, which was my pick. That was wrong. Who wants to go first? First in, best dressed. How do you guys feel about the recycling of the SOM mechanics here?
So I would like to step in real quick, because I did not play SOM, and I can definitely understand how someone who did play SOM would be disappointed. I to my mind, it looks like an efficient use of dev resources, basically for the reasons that you said.
Mm.
You know, some people call it lazy, but listen, you know, we had to wait 15 weeks for Phase 4. Anything to speed up the launch of Phase 4 was direly necessary, in my opinion. And so if that involves, hey, reusing these mechanics are ones that not many people have seen, that seems efficient. If the alternative was waiting in Phase 3 for another 4 weeks, you know, there's no question this was the right move.
Oh, I agree,
So
and I'm with you, Fred.
that's the way I'm looking at it.
I'll add in as well. If the decision was, if we make all new mechanics for MC, it means that now we don't have, like, you know, the Real system. You know what I mean? Then no brainer. Absolutely. Just use the SOM mechanics. I'm okay with that if it leads to new content elsewhere. I'm totally cool with that. I get it. So I understand where you're coming from. And like, it really should be iterated again that, like, this should own. I'm going into bat for the SOM players here, of which there, again, sorry to say, there weren't very many. If you played SOM, you would be disappointed with this, but not many people did that. So I'm like, if you didn't play SOM, what the fuck do you care that these mechanics are the same? Who else wants to jump in on this?
Well, they're literally just copy pasting, which, I mean, I guess that's completely fine. I just think to say that, you know, it's a benefit because we wouldn't have got the phase earlier. They're still, like, developing these new mechanics that they put into the game, like, actively, right? So, like, reals are being developed actively. They're adding things after the fact to them, like, for example, the tier 0 items, right? Which is a shame because, you know, had we known, right, when we were getting those reals for the first time, that we would eventually be able to buy our tier 0, maybe that would have changed the way we spent them. So I just feel like the devs do have a little egg on their face in the way that they've kind of conducted the phase so far. And I would just hope on the SOM mechanics that, you know, it's not just copy paste going forward, because, you know, when I was thinking about a season of Discovery Molten Core, I was expecting something different. And while that's true for the people who did not play SOM, I didn't play SOM all the way through. I think I quit in, like, BWL, but it would just be, like, lazy. I think there's no other way to put it than lazy.
Okay.
I've kind of put it in the same boat as them giving us the world bosses as an instance. They didn't change anything for them at all, as far as I'm aware. Like, you could almost do it with a really geared dungeon group already, because they're just vanilla cut and paste. But everyone thought that was mad because it was content that barely any players saw.
So you're saying,
just
to jump in, Ubiquitous, and keep you sort of, if I'm picking up what you're putting down here, are you saying it's like mildly hypocritical to be okay with old vanilla mechanics on the world bosses that we're just seeing for the first time because basically no one did it before, but not apply that same argument to new MC with the SOM mechanics?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't tell you what a single SOM mechanic is because I gave that little of a fuck about SOM. So it'll be new content for me and 95% of the player base. And that it's funny that there's people that never played SOM complaining that it's a SOM copy and paste, and it's like, brother, it's new to you. Why are you just jumping on the fucking criticism
the hate
bandwagon?
Train, right?
I
mean,
but
yeah, keep going. Sorry, mate.
No, that's pretty much it. Like, if I guess in a little toxic take, I mean, we're happy to do just the old MC a million times over. Heaven forbid we have to do SOM twice.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, is there anyone here who disagrees with that? I think it's a very fair point to raise, and it's a good sort of, you know, pushback to my opening statement about, like, oh, it is a bit disappointing that the SOM things were just recycled. Is there anyone here who is actually also really disappointed by it?
Like I said, I'm not disappointed by it. I didn't play SOM, so it was new to me. I found it more engaging than I would have because I've, you know, been playing Molten Core, WoW, and clearing Molten Core for 20 years. So something different was welcome. I will say in that regard, though, I think probably for Molten Core, they probably can get away with that. I think going forward, if that just continued to be the MO, I think you'd end up seeing a pretty drastic fall off in the player base.
But if I can push you on that point, Creepy, can I get you to explain why, because I think, as Ubiquitous says, if we push further into the content, into your BWLs, into your AQs, into your Naxes, and we start to chip away at what percentage of the SOM player base saw that content. You know, SOM's population dwindled as the tiers went on. If fucking no one saw AQ, if fucking no one saw Nax with the changes that SOM brought, how much more offensive does it get if they really do just keep copy pasting?
So I think it's a twofold thing. I think a big part, at least in my personal opinion, of the problem with SOM was it was incredibly poorly timed. I mean, I've been playing Classic WoW literally since it came out 20 years ago, and I only want to play Classic WoW. But SOM
people
came out right when TBC was like in full swing, so even for me who loves Classic and want to play every iteration of Classic, them coming out with a Season of Mastery at the time they did seemed like an absolutely insane note.
But the one thing, if you're getting this, the one thing that SOM had, like the SOM had a lot of negatives in its you know, why not to play SOM column, obviously, that you're touching on, Creepy, but the one seeming like it had a lot of positive points that, you know, again, it's a shame. And this is, I'll get to an ultimate point later on, that I think SOD is going down a bit of a SOM route, in that it might be a version of the game that people doesn't attract an exorbitant crowd in like late phases, but it will be something that people remember fondly and had fun with, and sort of go, oh, you should have played, it was fun. But anyway, we'll get there later. What I want to say, Creepy, is like, with the SOM raids, oh fuck, I just had my point, I've lost it. Oh, that's right. One of the universally accepted positive points about SOM was the raid content. People were like, hey, the raids in SOM were actually really fucking fun. So if Blizzard's taken that feedback on and gone like, oh, well, there we go. When we did SOM, they seem to really like the raids. So let's now introduce that to a wider audience. Is that, I guess I'm saying, is that still problematic for you or not?
So it's not problematic for me from a personal enjoyment perspective, because I didn't play SOM. So to me, it's all new. So I'm interested in that. I will say I had some friends that played SOM fairly competitively and rated all the way through it, and I thought some of the stuff I saw from the later phases, especially Nax, looked pretty bad. But that's kind of neither here nor there. So for me, it'd be good, it'd be nice, and I would enjoy something that's new content to me. But the problem is, it's not the entirety of the player base. And I think you find in iterations of Classic WoW, like Season of Mastery or Season of Discovery, you have a cross-section of the player base that is just, they're there for it. They're going to play, and they're interested. If Blizzard makes bad decisions, well, okay, it sucks. But then you also have a non-insignificant portion of the player base that when Blizzard makes poor decisions, it's fuck that, I'm out, and they don't come back. And if you look at the high point of Season of Discovery, which I think was like, you know, from what we can base it off from like Ironforge.pro, you had like I think at the start of phase 2 maybe, or the end of phase 1, I can't remember when it was, you had like something like 427,000 individual characters logging raids through Ironforge.pro. That's a lot. That's rivaling 2019 Classic. And then as the phases have continued and Blizzard has made poor decisions, that number has gone down and down and down. And every new phase that comes out, people do come back and they want to see what it's all about. And as soon as they get turned off again, they're out. And then some of them just don't come back. So the player base is dwindling. And so for me, I have no problem with it. The SOM mechanics, great. But if that means 20% of the player base by the time BWL comes out is just going to take a hike, in turn that means Blizzard's going to put less dev time into it, and the game is going to wither and die on the vine, which is what I don't.
Fair enough.
If I could speak kind of off of that, I never played SOM, so to me the mechanics were new. I thought that was great. But if I could created the perfect environment across all different player types, what I would have personally done is have layer 1 be basic SOM mechanics, basic fire resist damage. have layer 2 be a little bit more mechanical, and require more fire resist. But for those players like myself who are top end players, min max everything, go crazy, want the craziest experience, have level 3 cater to those players. Have it be shit falling off the ceiling, stuff falling off the walls, you got to move, more like Mythic style raiding for those players who want that experience. Now I get that Blizzard probably doesn't have all of the resources to dedicate to make all those changes, and I get that. But I truly think that they should have catered to the higher end player and which is what they tried to do, but I don't think that layer 3 necessarily did that. I think that now, again, we're going to all go in with the right amount of fire resist, and there's not going to be much of a difference between layer 3 and layer 1. Sure, the mechanics are different, but I would have loved to have seen additional stuff on top of the SoD mechanics because I think that they're pretty basic.
You raised a really good point, and we might as well get there now because we were going to start talking about the difficulty. And look, I'll keep you rolling there because just to get you chewing on this one, you're actually saying something that obviously some people have been saying, and it's a great point. I went into this last week on the podcast going like, it's all well and good for me to say I'm not a fucking great like raider or anything, and I would never see the hard content, but I was like, what's the harm given now that we have selectable difficulties, and it's not about making new raid content that a certain portion of the player base won't see, blah blah blah. What's the point of designing shit if we're just making it too hard and phasing people out? That argument doesn't apply here when we're talking about MC and these heat levels. So like, the raid has been made, and now it's just you pick which numbers are going to appear on your screen in terms of difficulty or whatever when you go in there. So I was all for, and I talked about this with Grant. I'll get you commenting there. Maybe Grant can jump in after. But I mentioned to Grant that I personally wouldn't hate seeing a pretty hard heat level 3 that pushes you guys that are better at the game than me and gives you something fun to do. And you know what? If you decide it's too hard and not worth it, there's heat level 2 for you right there, and it's only going to drop a little bit less gear, and it's really not that big of a deal if you can't do heat level 3. A really wild point that was brought up in the Countdown Discord that I'm a little bit surprised that I'm as on board with as I am. I wouldn't have thought initially that I'd like this suggestion, but now I'm like, fuck it, why not? Is the notion that, and forgive me whoever said this in the Countdown Discord, but I think a few of you are discussing it now. What would, and this will get the angry YouTube commenters fired up, what would be the harm of potentially reworking this to have heat level 1 be old school Molten Core as we know it, literally the vanilla version for the scrub pug groups to just blitz through, and they get obviously much less gear for doing that, but they still get a little bit of gear. You can roll against 25 other people and pray to the RNG gods just like you did back in the day, and that's that. Heat level 2 is your next step up with your SOM mechanics, and then heat level 3 is SOM mechanics, fire resistance, increased difficulty for you crazy guys. And, the drop rate is just adjusted so that everything is somewhat worth it, no matter whether you do 1, 2, or 3. Does anyone, I'd say, do you think that's a fucking outrageous suggestion, or could we build on that?
I love it.
I think that'd be perfect. That is
great.
exactly what I described. I think it'd be perfect. And to keep the players who want to play with the pacifiers in their mouth not getting crazily upset, you can keep all the gear the same amount of drops, even though I have to bite down on a towel when I say this. Everyone in the level 3 should be getting higher quality gear as well as increased drops. But I will bite on the towel and say, keep all the gear the same. Don't make anyone upset about that because they can't do 3 and 2. But exactly what you said is perfect. Perfect.
I'm glad you got the self-awareness to know that's not an overly popular opinion, but like I don't personally don't have a dog in the race. I don't really know how I feel about the different qualities, but I do feel like they've nailed it with the quantity being the issue with the heat levels, and I think most of the player base is reasonably happy with it. Guys, that sounded like it fired a few of you guys up. Please, guys, we're all friends here. Jump in, talk over each other. It doesn't matter. What do you guys think of shaking up the heat levels as they are presented?
I agree with everything you said. I just don't think they have the manpower /dev team for it.
you don't think
that's just what I think.
I mean, I hate doing this because I'm not a dev, but it wouldn't be a reasonably thing to implement. Just go, oh shit, we'll copy paste. Heat level 1 is vanilla. Heat level 2 is SOM. Heat level 3 is our custom design.
I was going to say that, like, look at what they did for BFD, Nomer, and ST. They added in new bosses with new mechanics. I mean, the mechanics weren't that hard by any means, but they could have probably added in more and made it more difficult. So, I mean, I think it's pretty easy. But again, I'm like you said, I'm not a dev. I don't develop or anything, so I don't know how really easy it is. But I think the level 3 adding in something that's maybe towards the mythic level that's super hard to do would have been a great move by them.
I'm being told in Twitch chat to keep letting you cook, Grant. Your fans are here and they're cheering you on like it's a rap battle, mate. Roll.
No, I was just gonna say that I mean, that'd be level 3 is adding in, the new mechanics that they could develop. Level 2, I think the SOM mechanics, it was new, right? Like I never played SOM. Going in there, I didn't think it was too different from like classic though. Like I think we did one of the bosses, like the first boss, Lucifron. We like took the ads away, just ranged them, and we just sat there and killed it, and it was like the most boring boss ever. So like we were, I didn't really know what the mechanic is or what the addition was. Like it would have been cooler if they added in a bunch of new stuff to it. And then I think like, heat level 1, like for example, we have alts to talk about too, which we haven't really covered too much, especially with the tier 0.5. But, if you're an alt, and let's say you can't get into your guild runs, your main guild runs, you can go to pugs, and going in and doing like a level 1, which is like the typical, I'd say MC 2019 classic, experience where there's just those mechanics. It's a pretty easy, face roll, go in, you're in and out probably in like an hour maximum. That would be ideal, I think, setting up that way. So I do hope like future phases, or I guess future raids like BWL, because I don't know what they did in BWL for SOM. And I don't know how they're going to handle it. If they're trying to make everything resistance based, like I can see AQ being nature resistance and Nax being frost resistance. BWL, is it going to be fire resistance again? I don't know. But maybe that's something that Blizzard could, consider is, hey, if we're going to make 3 levels, maybe do BWL 1 as simple, classic BWL 2, put in the SOM mechanics. I don't know what they were, but maybe add those in if they were fun. And then 3 is, make something pretty challenging or add in a lot of new mechanics and new stuff.
Mates, I'll just get you to keep rolling on one little thing, and then I want to open it back up to the floor on this one. But Grant, just to weave in the difficulty aspect of, while we're talking about difficulty, just to talk about the difficulty of what you got in Heat Level 3. You were on the show last week with me, and we were talking about what your ideal challenge was going to be going into Heat Level 3. And I said, because I'm a fuckwit, I'm like, I want to see you guys go through old school prog. I'm, even though I'm not doing the raid, I love content that like presents a situation where, not everyone is running around in the same level, in the same gear in Orgrimmar and all that shit, blah, blah, blah. Let's have something that separates the men from the boys, whatever it might be. You said that you wanted something that presented a challenge that, had you progging for hours and hours on the first night, but ultimately still had you clearing it that first night because you're running with a good guild and you guys are confident in your abilities. You wound up getting, I think, what you wanted out of that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, the 9-hour progression time was, I'd say was reasonable. We should have done it sooner. But yeah, I think 9 hours was fine.
What hour were you ready?
We haven't even talked about the dogs yet.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot to get through. There's a lot to get through. I haven't forgotten about any of this stuff. We're going to get to the dogs, the totems, the everything. But I have to ask, Grant, at which hour would you pinpoint as the hour in which you were ready to fucking stab Creepy in the neck?
Probably hour 6. I mean, it was definitely the last hour. There's one hunter, I love him. He's Die City on our team, but
I saw poor Die City. Yeah,
two times, and I just I kicked him out and took a Shadow Priest to finish it off because there was, it was like towards the end of the night. I'd work the next day. I was like, I didn't want to sit there and have to keep progging on that. So
we're going to talk about the fun little guild friction at times that pushes the friendships. Guys, just on this point, and we'll get to the dogs, we'll get to the totems just after this, but who wants to jump in? Again, just fucking shout over the top of each other, guys, whoever wants to get in here. Was the difficulty let's do the Goldilocks test. Was it, too hot, too cold, or just right?
I personally think it was too cold, and there were certain things that made it difficult that didn't add to my enjoyment of the run. And I'll just table it and say we probably spent in our run with Grant half of our time in Gar's room with Corehounds spawning on us, and that was what, quote, made it difficult. Now, if the essence of that fight were Corehounds spawned out of the ceiling and everyone had to deal with it and they just spawned and we had to deal with them, love it. But the fact that trash was spawning on us and that was what made it, quote, difficult and where we were stuck most of our time, I didn't like that as what made it such a long 9-hour prog run.
So Grant, you and I would, you were using me as a conduit, which you're always welcome to do, mate. And we were talking to Tim while things were going on, asking what the deal was with the core hounds. Are these crazy respawn rates intentional? Blah blah blah. What's going on with the difficulty on the molten core and all that kind of stuff. And Tim, such a fucking legend, was getting back to me immediately with answers for you, Grant, and I was forwarding them on, so hopefully that helped you guys out. But we might as well weave in the dog issue here with the difficulty conversation, because I have to just, I think that was you, Streets, just then talking. I have to just push you in to sort of say, was the dogs the main part of the difficulty headache? And knowing now that it wasn't intentional and a bug, does that change your feelings towards it and the raid?
Yeah, absolutely. If it was intentional, then it would have been great. But there were times where we're seeing a new boss. It takes us, we're 4 minutes, 5 minutes into a fight. We just cleared the dogs for 6 minutes. So now we have to sit there and wait for 7 minutes for these respawns to then kill them again to then go into the boss. So the fact that it was unintentional aggravates me even a little bit more, because it did take away from the rolling progression, let's try and get through this type of stuff, when you have to now sit there and wait for an unintended mechanic to pass.
Fair enough. Sorry, that was you, Shaq. Streets, mate. I think we're going to jump in. Go for it.
Okay, Streets, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. It's we were in the middle of several boss encounters and dogs would spawn. So I just don't understand how it's so difficult to, when a boss encounter starts, all trash timers should just cease or stop until the encounter is either over, we defeat the boss, or it's a wipe. I don't understand why they're spawning in the middle of a boss encounter. And this game's 20 years old. That just seems really buggy and just
to
not
jump
ideal.
in and not to sort of, this is more for a point of conversation than to White Knight too hard here, but I mean, we call it 20-year-old content, but to be fair, it is I guess you'd still call it a new raid, even though it's the SOM mechanics and everything. There were a few wrinkles in there. But I'd ask you guys, would you rather have, like we've seen, no PTR, have this all be a big mystery with surprises? What are we going to get? Doesn't matter whether you're ultimately, let down or not, but having that mystery surprise factor. Would you rather have that there with a couple of, issues like the dog situation that's there for the first 24 hours and eventually the bugs are worked out? Or do you want the other situation where it's like, hey man, we're high octane, these little bugs piss us off, we'd rather have a PTR and spoil the surprise if the bugs get worked out?
I don't think that a PTR is required for Blizzard to understand the timing of the spawn to be able to
I think
fix
that's fair. I think that's a fair point. This was a pretty obvious thing, and I think it's fair to ask the question of what kind of testing this went through before release.
It feels like none for that to happen. If they would have just ran through it one time themselves, the devs do it themselves,
they would have seen it. They would have seen it straight away. And I think there's been a couple of things through, Kata and SOD, that I have thought the same thing, where there are very, very obvious, this isn't niche stuff that it would have taken a few hours to discover. There is very, very obvious, problematic shit that, and I love the people on the QA team. They're fucking fantastic, but it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like, it's like you say, it's not being run through. It's because I know the players on the QA team. They're just like you guys. They're fucking, trust me, they're just as good as you guys. They would have seen this straight away and been like, oh, what the fuck's with the dog? So it's kind of like,
then it just never happened.
What's happening? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I
that-
knew there was an issue, and they haven't tested anything when we pulled the first set of trash mobs, and the Surgers and Annihilators couldn't be poisoned or bleeded, but everything else could. And then they fixed that in the middle of the run, and still half of the dungeon you still couldn't poison and bleed. So it's like it was definitely not tested.
Yeah,
I will-
go ahead, creepy. Go ahead.
I will say that to answer your specific question, if I would accept the horrible bugs like that, if it means we keep the blind prog.
Yeah.
To be honest,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I fucking loathe PTR and ruining a raid before we've even actually run it once. So if I have to spend 9 hours in Molten Core as opposed to 6 because of a bug, I'll take that. I fucking loathe PTR.
I agree.
I
Yeah, I'm on the
feel the
same page
same
there.
way. Yeah.
I did too much BTR, and that's like I don't want to do it anymore. So, I think they just need to do some better testing. I don't know what the issue is there and how they missed it all. To be honest, that was a little eye opening. But
It was strange, yeah, for sure. Guys, let's talk about the totems for a second. Look, it was very, very obvious as I sigh at two Alliance who felt the need to two Alliance 60s who felt the need to kill the lowly little 59 in front of them in Silithus. I'll come back for them at 60, you pieces of shit. The totem range was an issue. Grant, I watched about 3 or 4 hours of your guys' run, and like if I had $1 for every time the totems were brought up, I'd have at least $36. You know, and it I don't want to say like the popcorn moments are like, I don't want to use the term fun, but they are intriguing to see guild dynamics when obviously like you guys are trying to prog, the raid is presenting difficulties. You know, no matter how good of friends you are or how far back you guys go, things will get, you know, and they didn't get that testy, to be fair with you guys, but I could hear, you know, I've talked to a lot of people, I've met a lot of people in my life, I'm pretty good with reading people. I know when someone's getting pissy, even though they're trying to hide it, you know, like things were getting there was a little bit of friction. When you've got the shaman going, look, I'm fucking dropping the totem, don't tell me I'm not dropping the totem. And you got other people going, I don't see the fucking totem because I don't see the fucking buff. They were not saying it this harshly, but you know what I mean. A lot of back and forth and a lot of confusion. Yeah. So talk to me about that situation.
Jack was saying it much more harshly.
Talk to me about that situation of the confusion with the fire res totems and the need for it.
Sure.
So-
So, go ahead, Grant.
no, you go. Yeah.
So I'm the player of Get Good. I came in with 315 fire resist, fully buff. So without totem, I was still able to squeak it along. Some other people were saying that they needed the totem, but I'll speak to that moment of what happened when I started screaming at our shaman, and then I'll kind of say what I feel about the totem. I had for that pull, I was counting the totem to get me to 226.
Right.
I got one shot and I looked and I was like, I must have not been in the range of the totem. The next immediate thing that I did was click on my shaman in my group, and I saw that he did not have the fire resist totem buff on himself. And 1 second later, he got one shot, and our resto druid got one shot. If he's not on the totem, then the totem, in my opinion, is not in the right place, or it's not down. So that was why I immediately called him out like, hey, I know I was not in range of the totem, and then you and our resto druid just got one shot. The totem was not down, or it was not in the right place, because at that pull, we were all stacking on the wall, and we weren't moving around the room that much, so I know the totem wasn't down. Now, I am also on the side of get good, have the fire resist in your bag, put on more FR, which was what I did, and which is what I'm going to do going forward. I am going for cap, not including fire resist totem in there whatsoever. I've min-maxed my gear out so that I still have a significant amount of plus healing. But all that's going into my equation for FR is improved Mark of the Wild of anything else aside from Gar. And then on the Gar fight, I have 226. I am not relying on anyone to drop a fucking totem for me anymore. You better believe that. And I'm just shooting for the 226 on my own.
All right. Keep going, guys. Grant, talk to me not just about, I do want to hear about the mechanics of shaman totems and the difficulties of raiding around them and blah, 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 but also like from a guild management perspective, of these moments are so common where you do get the like, you know, did you press this button? Yes, I fucking did. I'm not so sure that you did. I'm telling you that I pressed it. Like, how hard is that to manage at times when prog is on the line?
It's so annoying because it's like, you know, you just want to get through the content. I mean, you know, we're rating at a high level, so the expectation is everyone should be just pressing their buttons properly. And if people don't, then that's where it causes problems. You know, it's pretty easy. We can go in logs and see if they casted it. I don't think the fire resistance buff shows up in logs, unfortunately, but I do think like you can go look and see if they've actually casted it during the fight. It has to be, you know, during the combat fight per se. But from a guild management standpoint, I mean, I mean, these things pop up all the time, right? Like, I think if you've ever been in a GM or raid lead role, there's always going to be, you know, people said they did something even though they didn't, or maybe they did do it and, you know, someone thought they didn't, whatever the case is. You know, you sort of just have to look past it and be like, okay, like make sure you, in the next poll, you do what you're supposed to do so we can continue progressing. Yeah, so I don't know. That's basically what, from a guild management standpoint. But
All
if you
right.
do you want me to jump into the
Well, yeah. So now
totems
on the totem thing, like, you know, how has your first run changed your attitude towards relying on totems for the fire res?
So I don't like it just because, I mean, I play shaman tank, so like, you know, after a few of my melee died and they said they weren't in range of totem, whatever it was, I really had to start paying attention to using the projection, the totemic projection, which Blizzard put into the game. I mean, you know, paladins have their auras, which are basically, you know, come from the paladin directly. Your totem has the, you know, your projection, so you can move the totems around and place them in specific spots. So I started getting used to it where I could place it in a spot where I knew, you know, it was hitting me as well as the melee group. It wouldn't be, I dropped the totems right next to me and then I put it over on the side. And then you just had to make sure that you were constantly moving it. And then you need to have almost a weak aura that would remind you saying, hey, you know, your totem's about to expire, or put down a new one, you lost the buff, whatever it is. So like if you can start doing that, it does add like another, you know, aspect to the game of keeping it down, which I don't mind. I think it does like help, you know, if you can have 100% totem uptime, you know, you're a pretty good player at a shaman. It sort of like separates the men from the boys. But now, you know, if you're looking at it as like a requirement from being more on the casual side, you know, like a casual player, and, you know, having totem uptime or going to a pug or something, you're not going to get that 100% of the time. So that's where the, you know, and that's 90% of the player base, right? Like, I think the hardcore raiders, like at our level, you know, that's maybe 10%. That might be generous, might be less than that. But like 90%, you know, aren't going to want to do that. So I do think like the totem range or the auras, or just taking that whole, you know, 60 fire resistance out of it, could be pretty beneficial, you know, from a more casual, I guess, pug standpoint.
Right. We do know though that obviously, like, totem tech has always been slightly annoying / wonky in terms of, I believe that the totem doesn't show up until the server ticks, so you could conceivably be waiting almost a full 2 seconds for the aura to apply after you've dropped the totem. You know, the range is a bit finicky at the best of times as well, sort of ducking in and out. Like, do you feel like it like, where do you sort of, not to attribute blame, I'm not trying to gang up on our poor, you know, my poor shaman brethren, I should say, as I sit here and, you know, I'm fucking 10% away from 60 on my shaman that'll be my PvE main. But, you know, do you feel like there were tech issues, or it is just a user thing with like, shamans are just gonna have to be on their fucking game because you can solve the problem yourself?
I think the shaman just need to be on their game. If they keep it that way, if Blizzard wants to change it, I mean, they could easily change it multiple ways. They could give it, you know, they can make totems like raid wide, or maybe just resistance totems raid wide, and then they could also increase the, you know, auras as well, like paladin auras. They can increase the range to be like 100 yards instead of like 20 or 30. I mean, there's simple ways that they could do to fix this. But like, if they're not going to fix it, then I do think like it's 100% on the shaman. Then they need to keep it up, and that's just, I mean, it is part of the classic experience.
Okay. Where shall I'm just trying to think. Anyone else on this one before we move on the shaman totems and the fire res? Nope. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yep. Jump in. Go for it.
I was just going to say, again, once we get 2 pieces, we'll go up to 40 yards.
Oh, here we go. He's about to defend all the shaman players.
Our
What about
resolve
Shaman
at that
tanks
point.
though? Shaman tanks don't get it.
You don't get 2-piece from tier 1. You're not gonna
You
wear
get
tier
you
1.
get tier 1. Oh wait, you're talking like DPS pieces because there's tier 1 shaman pieces that are.
The set bonus for all shaman tier pieces, tier 1, as far as I'm aware, 2-piece, is your friendly totems go to 40 yards. Is that not correct?
I don't think for shaman. That's not the shaman tank bonus. Sorry, tank.
Okay, I'll check
DPS
this.
it is. DPS it is though. You're right on that. I know it's on the elemental side, but I don't think it's on the shaman tank side. I'll double check too. But I didn't think I had that in my bonus when I was looking at it.
Yeah, your 2-piece says increases your attack speed by 30%.
Yeah.
Oh, very, very true then. So yes, it's Enhance has it and Elemental
Yep.
has it, but Shaman
Yep.
Tank is just shit out of luck. That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sounds like he's
I
wearing
guess-
2-piece Ellie.
You could do that. You could also, of course, take the point in Restoration, increase the range by 10, although you'd probably be fucking your build up by doing that.
Exactly. Yep. You don't go into resto at all.
All right, Grant, where do you think we should head to next? What's the next big topic?
And we talked about mechanics, fire resistance, dogs.
We could talk about the new boss.
Yeah, the
Oh,
new
of
boss.
course. Thank you. The new boss, the Molten
I like the new
Core.
boss.
Let's get into it, guys. Now, look, I'll set you guys up here and to say that, look, I was trawling around on Twitter and everything after the reactions started coming in after the first couple of runs of Molten Core, and I think it's probably fair to say that I don't know, the response to this one, I want to say mixed, but it did seem more negative than anything. I don't share this sentiment, but I want to hear from you guys. I'm happy to hear whether people give it the thumbs up or thumbs down. The issue with the feedback was the aesthetics, and people were like, oh, it's a giant testicle and this is so lame and blah, blah, blah. And then you sort of, I mean, people say that, you know, I fucking fall for this shit every time, the hyperbole, but like, I don't know if they are being hyperbolic or just fucking idiots, but you do see a lot of these fuckwits going, oh, SoD is officially dead. Look how lame this new boss is. Oh, we got all this hype about this new boss and it's a fucking flaming testicle. I'm just like, let's settle down on the SoD is dead because of the fuck you don't like the look of the new boss thing. Like, my mind's turned to, and again, we're just talking about the aesthetics. We'll get to the mechanics in the same conversation, but I thought the mechanics were neat. You guys will tell me about that. On the like sort of the metalness of the aesthetics, I'm like, I don't know. I kind of think people might disagree with this. Cthulhu was a giant eyeball. Like people go, oh mate, it's fucking metal. It's cool. It's menacing. I'm like, well, what's the real difference between Cthulhu and this boss, aesthetics wise? Like, it's a giant circular object. Smack it with your weapons. There's lore behind it. It's the Molten Core. Ragnaros was guarding the Molten Core. All I'm saying is I'm not overly offended by it. Was I hoping for something different? Sure, let's say that. Am I like wildly offended by this boss? No. Fucking whatever. Okay, whatever. How do you guys feel about it? Aesthetics and then mechanics.
I'll go first. I would be willing to bet that most of the people complaining about it looking like a testicle and that really being their only primary concern would be most of the people would be playing in heat level 1.
Or people not playing the fucking game.
Yeah. I doubt many people progging were too upset or too focused on the visual of what the boss looked like. To me, I don't care if it was 2 testicles. Like, I thought that the fight had a little bit more dynamic, play to it initially. But I think that we kind of found a cheese strat to it. The biggest part, a difficult part of that fight was dealing with canceling out the 2 debuffs that came out. There was a pretty quick timer on how close you needed to stack. So all that we just did was we all clumped together, we all stood on top of each other, and we kind of technically eliminated that mechanic out of the fight, because as soon as it came out, we're all already stacked, boom, it was wiped away, and then we just moved left and right as a raid and dodged the things coming out of the ceiling. So I think we kind of found a strat that, again, took away from the mechanics. But, again, it was a new fight. It was interesting. We had to sit there and we had to figure it out. But I think going into the following weeks now, it's going to be a one-shot every single time, and it's going to absolutely burn.
Very good. I'll just jump in and say fucking, on the testicle thing, it is They do typically roll in pairs. Maybe there's a hidden second one there somewhere. Who knows? We've got to unlock it. But look, you know, I was watching you guys do the fight, and I loved hearing in real time the literally the jigsaw puzzle, you know, piece click and fit when you guys were like, oh, okay, let's just, you know, you were having massive problems with the hunters and creepy. We'll talk about the fucking raids issues with the hunters in a second. Massive issues with the hunters and the range. Eventually you said, please, can we just fucking stack? This is getting ridiculous. You stacked, it solved all the problems. A few more wipes, I think, because it was just late at night and everyone was tired, but you knew how to do it. I was going to say it looked really, really easy once you figured it out. But the one thing I knew I couldn't see and work out was how the debuff was working. And I feel like that's the hard element of the encounter, that I couldn't see what was going on there, because otherwise it just looked like you guys were just strafing left and right every fucking 20 seconds. Keep going, guys, on what you thought of this one.
So from the aesthetics look, I'll sit on that. I didn't care. I didn't even know about the flaming testicle until you just brought it up here in the podcast. So I guess I haven't really read too much online about it. But from a mechanic standpoint, though, there's two buffs. There are two debuffs that go out. One's cinder. The other is like, I forget, was it ashes? Ashes, yeah. And what you have to do is basically that as time goes on, if you have the debuff, it does more damage to everyone around you, and it'll eventually one shot you and everyone around you within like, probably it's quick. It's like 2 seconds.
2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Yeah. 2 seconds. So in order to remove the debuff, you have to find the person with the opposite debuff, and you have to get together and stack, and then the debuff goes away. So like Shaq was saying, our strat was we just all stacked to one another besides the hunters. And the hunters, we were able to figure out, hey, you can max melee range, and the hunters could be literally just 2 steps behind us and be able to, shoot the boss. And so we just moved left and right. There's a meteor that drops. The meteor would start to drop. We moved to the right, we sat there and kept DPSing. And then all of a sudden you move to the left, and then ads spawn. And we completely, this is something, I don't know if this is intentional, but the ads attack the water elementals, which I think that is intentional. But if all the water elementals die, then the ads just come to us, and they don't really do a lot of damage. So we just sort of just killed them or cleaved them down on top of the boss, and we let all the water elementals die. And then we killed the boss and finished it off. So I don't know if that's like intentional or if that's part of the fight. I feel like, losing all the water elementals would like cause a wipe maybe, but I don't know.
It looked to me from watching it, and I watched on several streams, that the water elementals prevent the boss from building its energy gauge. And when it builds its energy gauge, it starts doing AoE damage when it builds to 100. So they're like stabilizing the core, and then when it reaches 100 energy, then it starts nuking you, or it's 1,000 energy actually. So that's the point of protecting the firefighters.
Yeah, so I guess we used, and this is not allowed in the game anymore. I think Blizzard fixed this, but we used mana or Viper Sting to keep the energy down. So Viper Sting was working. I know there's another guild that got, I think they were third on our server, Strictly Business. They went in the day after. And they said that Viper Sting was like completely immune. They couldn't use it at all. So they actually had to do the mechanics. I think it'd probably kill all the ads. I need to go look at their logs. But yeah, I think they might have fixed that. So that might be intentional then. What happens when it hits 100 though?
So it happened with Noda, where it hit 100 when it was like at 4%, and then it started doing AoE damage every 0.5 seconds, and just this pulse to the raid. Although it didn't really seem like it was doing all that much damage. Though then again, they killed it like 3 or 4 or 5 seconds after it hit 1,000 energy. So who knows if it hit that 1,000 energy faster, if that would have eventually been a problem for the raid.
Got it. Okay. That's the mechanics. I mean, I think if I guess if you're doing level 3 and the boss is only accessible at level 3, then the Cinder and Ash thing is probably acceptable. But like if you're trying to get pugs to do this ever in the future, there's no way. I mean, the pug reaction time is 2 seconds to realize they have a debuff on them before the whole raid's dead. So
2 seconds to press their button. Forget about reacting.
Click their button.
Click their button. There you go.
Thanks for that footage, Streets. I'm just showing the quick replay of your kill now, guys, while we discuss it. Sorry, I missed it. I was wrestling a cat that I got sitting on my lap now.
Are you able to put it up on the screen?
On which screen, sorry?
Like just on the MC chat screen, the live screen we're on now, or no?
Oh, in Discord?
Yeah, I don't know if you can.
I don't
while we're talking about it, but if not,
so
It's on Twitch.
it's on Twitch, and the YouTube replay will be able to see it. But like,
it's on YouTube. I sent you. Yeah.
yeah. What was I going to say? The debuff again. Sorry, I missed it. If you just to go over it again, what's the debuff element of the fight?
So it's there's two debuffs. One is Ash, the other is Cinder. And when you get those, like basically if you don't have Ash and Cinder on top of one another, the debuff will stay on them and deal damage to everyone around them. So like historically what we started out doing strategy wise was we had a ranged and melee group, and like a melee would get a debuff and then a ranged would get a debuff, and they would jump in the middle of the lava and try to meet up to clear the debuff. And if you were slow to do it, you would basically wipe one of the groups. So you'd either wipe all the melee or wipe all the ranged. So that's essentially what it is. To remove the debuff, you have to get both individuals together. So like two people in the raid randomly get it. So that's why we stacked up.
Gotcha. Guys, we might anything more on this final boss before we move on? Nope. Okay. Let's talk loot, guys. Now look, you guys did get an eye, didn't you, at the end?
We did.
Talk to me about that and what it did for you, because we've seen some pretty cool pictures.
So yeah, I went to bed afterwards, and I know the guy who won it, we gave it to one of our top performing feral druids. I think he stayed up for 2 hours, leveled his blacksmithing, got all the stuff. You need like 8 of the epic items, the sulfurous, I forget what the term is.
Ingots.
Yes, thank you. We had to get 8 of those. We got 6 from the raid, and then actually Welcome was another competitive guild. They got first on our server. They ended up selling him the last 2, so he was able to get it. And when he got it, he equipped it and it went cat form, and it turns him into like a fire cat. It's pretty cool.
It looks very cool. How many feed picks did he have to give up for the last 2 ingots?
I don't know. I need to ask Moon from Welcome and see what the offer was.
But yeah, the model for the fire kitty is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, guys, go out and look for it. Sadly, not available in bear, right?
No,
Correct.
Yeah, bear form's normal. All the other forms he checked them are all normal. It's just the cat form that transforms you.
He did have a pretty good troll the next day. He came into the Discord, everybody hype about the flaming cat, and he's like, "Well, did you guys even see the bear yet?" And started whipping everybody into a frenzy. Then live streamed and just turned into a normal bear. And really good.
Very good. On the aesthetics of, we'll keep talking about the loot in a second, but just on the aesthetics of the molten gear now, a lot of people are discussing it. I think it all looks pretty cool. What do you guys think about what they've done with the gear and the fire res and the I guess you'd call it the transmog style effect?
I believe it's only on weapons, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, is it just
I
weapons? Okay.
It's just
we
weapons.
didn't give any weapons.
I got one. I have one on my shaman.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I got molten mace, tanking mace or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of differentiation, especially if you're clearing harder content to get it. Again, I'll say it over and over. I think that level 3, you should get better gear than level 2 and level 1. But again, to keep all the players that play with a pacifier in their mouth happy, we'll keep all the gear the same. But with that, I think that if we kept the gear the same, level 3, like tier pieces, should also be like fiery. Again, just to differentiate, to show that you're clearing the content at a higher level visually, as opposed to like inspecting you and having to see, molten or whatever labeled on it. Along with like how I think the cat thing's awesome, but I would have liked to have seen all level 3 tier potentially have some fire coming off of them. I think that would have been cool.
All right. What else did you guys get? Did you get anything good drop? Anything of note?
I think the horse disc.
Nothing ever.
No bindings.
We got a hunter leaf. That was our domo thing. We thought we'd get 2, whether it's an eye and a leaf, but we only got a leaf.
And I was saying before, apparently there's a new item on that loot table, right, for rogues. Is that the case? Have you guys seen this or not?
We have not.
I don't know. I saw something on Twitter of someone, like, I was laughing again before we started
I haven't
recording.
seen anything.
There was a guy losing his fucking mind, like a lot of dickhead WoW players do, losing his fucking mind that a rogue item had apparently been added to the Leaf and Eye loot table or whatever, and they couldn't believe that it would now their Leaf was not a 50% drop chance, it was now 33% or something. And they were again, it was like, sod dead, oh my god, these fucking devs, blah blah blah. But I mean, I think it's funny, but I don't know what the item is. I have to look in if that's true, but apparently word on the street is there's a rogue item that now drops from the chest as well.
I'm not sure about that.
I haven't seen anything like that either yet.
It might be bullshit. Maybe I'm fucking reading into it too far. I don't know. Many weapons or anything drop for you guys?
No, we got 2 trinkets. Caster trink. What's it called? Toe
Yeah,
ep?
toe ep. Yeah,
2 toe eps.
We got 2 toe eps.
Very nice.
Nothing else.
Nothing else
for
stands
rare
out.
other than the rag.
Yeah, the eye.
Again, I was barely paying attention to
we
what gear
need
was going
one
on.
item.
We lost an onslaught girdle.
Oh yes.
You
Yeah.
lost an
Yeah,
onslaught girdle.
Blizzard-
Where did it go?
So like we were having bag space issues with all the loot, and we roll need on it, as we're going. It's progression, like everyone passes, and just people roll need. And I guess I won the item, and my bags were full. I never even realized it. We just kept going, progged, and then we like left to go back. And I think it was after Doma, or it was prepping for Doma. We went to go get the douses to come back, and we did loot before that and realized that the onslaught girdle never went out, and we had all left the raid, so we came back to it, and unfortunately the boss had despawned by then, and we ended up losing one of those.
Guys,
So-
is it time to do auditions for a new GM?
Hey, listen, I'm still going to be peeping our Warriors belt slot when we get into raid next week. Trust me. I don't know where it went.
No, I think it despawned on the boss.
It's lost in the
unfortunately.
Matrix, man.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe we'll
So-
get a dev to listen to this and compensate you guys. We'll see what can be done.
Maybe they could go and see if it actually did end up on the boss. I would be curious. Like, I think that is what happened.
It was
but that-
I don't
Sulfuron
know.
that it was on, right?
Yeah,
Salyak's
so-
going to show up next week with an onslaught girdle equipped.
All good. All right, guys. Look, I mean, fuck, Grant, have we pretty much covered it, or is there anything about Molten Core we've left on the table?
I think we covered it. I don't know what else there is.
I can't think of anything either. I think that's about it.
No, it's pretty much that was pretty encompassing there.
Look, while I've got you guys, just to I won't keep you all night, but just to ask how your classes felt in that, top tier raid environment. Does anyone want to jump in and talk about how their class feels like in P4 now that you've driven it in the Heat level 3?
I love Shaman Tank. I'll be very honest. Like
Yeah.
it's really, I think it's really strong. I'm glad they took away that, fire immunity, especially in a Molten Core with most of the mobs. I just, it's very fluid. It feels great. I can't say anything negative about it. I think the mitigation was there too. I know Shaq, you were healing me. I think you even said that I was pretty tanky on progression. So there's no complaints from a Shaman Tank side. I'm really, really, really pleased with it. I think what they did with the ring runes helps out a lot, especially in the nature hit. The specialization
G'day,
for
mates.
weapons, if you go mace, if you go axe, whatever it is, that's all huge. So I love my class.
Oh, we didn't talk about the hunters and them being annoying on the last boss. Creepies had to go. Damn it, that's all right. Look, any other class? What do we got? Streets. What were you playing?
Rogue.
How'd it feel?
I love Rogue, man. It's just I've always been a Rogue at heart, but MC is a very range-friendly instance, so it is a tougher class to play in MC melee. But Rogue, single target. If I have 100% uptime or even like 90% uptime, I'll be top of the charts pretty easily.
I want to see it.
Hell yeah!
I think that not having world buffs during that run, we don't really yet have a good picture of what our comp is going to look like going forward. There's a lot of classes that scale differently off of world buffs. Warriors, for example, I think that they are currently simming the highest single target DPS with world buffs and full phase 1 gear. That did not show to be true, obviously with no world buffs and just pre-bis gear for Warriors. So I think that we still have to see what how that plays out throughout the rest of the phase and what world buffs do. But I played Priest. World buffs and buffs aren't really that important. I am new to Priest. I played Priest a little bit in the past, but we lost our main healer. That was our Priest last phase, and I knew that that role was going to be crucial and needed to be filled. So I've been studying up and learning Priest. I think it offers very good dynamic play using prayer mending and being able to use different ranks of renew to bounce it around the raid and deciding in real time, do I need to do a renew rank 1 or a rank 4 or a rank 5, and what is the best renew to use right here. Really adds a lot of dynamic play to Priest.
Did you feel strong? Did you feel strong in that heat level 3 as a priest healing?
I did. I mean, I actually looking at how the logs are still kind of funky. I'm never a fan of all-star ranking there, but I will say for a moment after Prague, I was number 1 on the all-star list for priests in the world. I did feel pretty strong. There was a lot of fights where I felt like I could shield specifically Baron before people exploded, and I got a ton of healing out there, preemptively healing. I personally wish that there was more damage. I love when things are on a knife's edge and where you really need to dial in to keep people alive, but I felt like there was a good amount of that throughout the raid. I think we're going to drop a healer and run less, which I think will add for more dynamic play, but I felt very, very strong on Priest for being able to keep the raid alive.
Yeah. That powered barrier too is clutch if you put it in the right spots and the right time.
For sure. Although I think I'm going to be switching back to the instant cast flash heals with our tank healing issues. Correct? Yeah.
All right.
But felt strong.
Very good.
There is a topic that someone DM'd me about that I did want to bring up.
What's that, man?
About MC. So, Blizzard had mentioned when we get in, like, the whole thing with progression is you get better gear, the raid becomes easier, etc. So there's with level 3 you need fire resistance gear, right? So you need 226. A lot of the gear in MC doesn't have a lot of fire resistance gear. I thought that would have been maybe something that they would have added or buffed on the tier. Like if you go in and you get like full MC gear, and let's say you don't go with any of the fire resistance gear that you farmed outside of MC for progression, you're going to be sitting way under that 226 cap. So I know Blizzard had mentioned they're trying to get it like, if you want to progress to level 3, you do like maybe level 1, level 2 a few times to get the gear. Once you can equip that and you get stronger. Well, there's no fire resistance gear on it. So I don't know if that was intentional or if Blizzard had like a better way of implementing that, or maybe they're going to change that in the future. But I do think like none of the tier sets, I mean, it has like maybe +5 fire resistance, +7 at a max. I think 10's like the max, but
yeah, my helmet's 10.
Yeah, but it's just pretty low. It's a little underwhelming, especially if you're trying to gear up. I was doing like Abyss list day for my tank, and I was like, okay, well, if I want to go in and use MC gear and still hit 226, like all my rings and my trinkets and everything are all like not from MC. And some of the off pieces too, like the cloak and whatnot. So and the neck. So it's like, you can I guess it's not really lining up to what they were saying of trying to progress through. So those people that do level 1 and level 2 and want to get to level 3 eventually, MC gear might not help them as much as it should, if that makes sense.
That might be an issue with Shaman Tank's gear, because Enhancement Shaman's gear, I'm just looking right now at the Sims. If you have the enchants and you're full tier 1, that's 181 fire resistance. So you can get another 45 from your trinkets, your rings, and your neck.
Okay.
And that's also not including Ember or Flask or Mark of the Wild or anything. So I mean, I think at least this might just be another case where Shaman Tank is the shit out of luck. That's wild. But for enhanced Shaman DPS, this set would work.
Okay.
All right.
Beyond that topic, I'm also on the side of like, I think that for getting to 226, you're sacrificing healing gear, you're sacrificing DPS gear to wear like just a flat 20 FR ring, a flat 20 FR trinket. Yeah. You don't get to wear those fat trinkets, fat rings. It adds to the difficulty because now your healing's not as strong, your kill times aren't as fast. So I actually like the fire resist requirement because you are dampened in the sense making it more difficult. Again, I will strongly emphasize that I hate the 226 hard cap, and I would like it to be more dynamic to allow better players to drop fire resist gear to make the healing more difficult and to potentially, you know, not stand in the shit on the ground and move out of it and allow for your guild to wear more DPS gear and less FR to go through quicker for speedrunning.
All right, guys. Well, look, we'll start to wrap it up. I'll just have one last question for you before I let you go. So I'll ask all of you the same one. Look, in all honesty, let's say with the caveat that, let's say the dogs weren't there. Let's say the respawn thing wasn't an issue. I know it was, and it sucks. And, you know, we've given Blizzard the slap on the wrist they deserve for that one. If that wasn't the case, what do you grade this new, you know, MC that we've been waiting to see? Like, out of 10, was it fun, guys? What do you think of it? Are you looking forward to running it every week for the next however many weeks? Give us the thumbs up or thumbs down, Grant.
I'd say, I mean, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. You know, it doesn't suck by any means. I've never done SOM before, so I actually like the newer mechanics. I wish they were a little bit harder. That's why, you know, I'm rating it a 7 and not a 9 or a 10. But, you know, I'm looking forward to it. It's, you know, I do hope they, you know, I think Tim said something about changing they're looking into the fire resistance and possibly changing that around. I'm excited to see what they come up with and do to make it a little bit more dynamic. I think if they do that, then yeah, like running it every week is going to be fun. We plan to speed run it, try to get it down to, you know, sub 30 minutes, and we'll see how fast we can get through it.
I feel like you were a 10 out of 10 12 hours ago. Has the hype died down a little bit now that you've like downed the boss and feeling accomplished?
It's mainly the fire resistance cap. That's the thing that's like that's killing me on it. And then I mean, MC is gonna get old after a while, right? Like we did it in 2019, and I remember, you know, you do it after, you know, your 100th MC run, you're like, dude, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's just not fun. And when you're trying to farm that last onslaught girdle for your guild or whatever it is, so I'd say 7 out of 10. Just, and it, you know, if the fire resistance gets fixed, you know, I could easily change that to maybe a 9 out of 10. So.
How about you other guys, Streets?
I was actually going to say more like a 5 and 6, personally. 3 reasons why I'd say is the FR cap, very lazy, in my opinion, in the black and whiteness of it. Kind of piggybacking off what Shaq said. Just no dynamic play. It's either 500,000 one shot or, you know, 500 damage. No new mechanics for the bosses if you played some. And the mechanics are very, very easy, I'd say. And then the third thing I would say, the new boss was underwhelming once you figured out how to do it. It was, once you do figure out how to do it, it's very easy, but apparently that might have been changed with the Viper Sting not working. So that'll be interesting next week. But yeah, I thought the new boss was underwhelming once you figure out the strategy. That's what I have to say.
Shaq?
This may come as a surprise, but I actually rate it as an 8.5 out of 10. I think it truly would have been a 9.5 out of 10 if the FR thing was fixed. But I look at it from a speedrunning perspective. I am so happy that we are not going to have to do a 500 mob, target dummy, AoE taunt, pull this, pull that, drag it all together, nonsense pull, like we had to do in Sunken Temple in order to get through this. And this is going to be a more raw healing, raw damage, fan out of this shit speed run, which I am very excited to get into and start unwinding and theory crafting how to get through it.
All right. Guy, Fred, I mean, you haven't done it yet. You were hesitant to review it?
I'll let you know. Yeah.
Too
later.
Easy. All right. Guys, I think that's about it. Look, unless anyone has anything else to say that they are dying for the devs to hear. Tim is still sitting here patiently listening in. He's been great. That's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss today. I just dinged 60, so I'm very, very happy. My raid's in 2 hours. I've just got to thank you. I've got to go get my last healing rune, which is super easy in Burning Steps. And the hard part I've got to do now is I've got to get Molten Core attuned. But I'm pretty sure I can do that solo. So I will
just head into BRD and click the thing.
Yeah, I did it on my hunt. Like, it's so easy with Feigned Death on the Hunter. The hard part was just finding the add-on to get the server ticks to do the lava jumps. But like, On the shaman, I'm sort of sitting here going, "Oh fuck! I know I'm going to die a couple of times trying to get past those fire mobs with stone, stone claw or something. I don't know. I'll try and figure it out." All right, guys. Look, thank you so much. You have been the best. I'll let you go off into the night and have fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Grant. As always, a pleasure, mate. Thanks again for putting this together.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And apologies again, guys. I was a little bit more airy-fairy with this one because I was mindlessly grinding mobs the whole time we were talking. I hope I stuck with it enough to sort of get us through, but you guys were fantastic. Streets, mate, it's lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
And Shaq, mate, thanks so much for joining as well.
Yeah, man, no problem. You were great.
Oh, I appreciate that. Shout out to Noted, obviously, as well. And shout out to your guild, Fred. Thank you so much again for coming on, mate.
Thanks. I'm always happy to be on. Always happy to chat. Thanks for having me, really.
What's your guild's name again?
Hooligans.
Hooligans. That's it. Very good. All right. Well, shout out to Noted. Great achievement. Shout out to Hooligans. Thanks so much, guys. All right, stream. Thanks so much, Tim. We'll catch you later. Stream, I'll see you later. I'll duck off stream and I'll talk to these guys offline. Thanks very much, guys. This will be on the podcast on Monday. Bye, stream. I should raid someone. I should be good. Let's go throw you off to... Who have we got here? Let's throw you off to RP.